This is Evangelist Henry Walker. Thank you for tuning into our podcast, or maybe listen to me on my website at henrywalker.org under audio messages, or maybe listen to me on my YouTube channel. We want to start a new message today talking about the Feast of Pentecost, or Shavuot, and how that feast is preparing us for the rapture. Let's go to Father in prayer first. Father, I thank you for another opportunity to minister to your people, Father. I ask you to use me just the way you want, Father. Let me say only what you want me to say, nothing more, nothing less. And Father, help people to open up their hearts and receive the word, but not only receive the word today, but study the word for themselves, Father. Help them to stand strong, Father, against people who won't agree with them, but have no backing in the word. And we give you all the praise and the honor, Father, in the mighty name of Yeshua, by the blood of Yeshua. And Satan, I rebuke you from this podcast, every succeeding podcast, and anybody listening out there. Go right now and not return in the name of Yeshua, by the blood of Yeshua. Let's go to the book of Exodus chapter 19, talking about Pentecost, the Feast of Pentecost, how it originated, how it was fulfilled on the day of Pentecost in Jerusalem. Exodus chapter 19. And Pentecost is this Friday, which is Sivan 6 on the Hebrew calendar. Just so you might, if you're wondering how you can see Hebrew calendar on my website, just go to henrywalker.org and you'll see Hebrew calendar. Click on that. The top left that has a link to the Hebrew calendar. And then it shows create calendar. Make sure that show all Hebrew dates is checked off in the top right. And you write it into the calendar. Just remember that the day runs from 6 p.m. to 6 p.m. You'll have the Hebrew dates and the Gregorian dates. So again, you go to Hebrew calendar, click on that, and at the top left is the Hebrew calendar. Click on that, and then create calendar. Make sure it show all Hebrew dates is checked off, and you go right into the calendar. But Exodus chapter 19, verse 1. In the third month, when the children of Israel were gone forth out of the land of Egypt, the same day, that's Sivan 3, Sivan is the third month. The same day they came into the wilderness of Sinai, for they were departed from Rephidim, and were come to the desert of Sinai, and had pitched in the wilderness. And there Israel encamped before the mount. And Moses went up unto Yahweh, and Yahweh called unto him out of the mountain, saying, Thus shall you say to the house of Jacob, and tell the children of Israel, You have seen what I did unto the Egyptians, and how I bare you on eagle's wings, and brought you unto myself. Now therefore, if you obey my voice indeed, and keep my covenant, then you shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine. And you shall be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words which I shall speak unto the children of Israel. And Moses came and called for the elders of the people, and laid before their faces all these words which Yahweh had commanded him. And all the people answered together and said, All that Yahweh has spoken we will do. And Moses returned the words of the people unto Yahweh. In verse 16, And it came to pass on the third day in the morning, this is Sivan 6, that there were thunders and lightnings and a thick cloud upon the mount, and the voice of the trumpet exceedingly loud, so that all the people that were in the camp trembled. And so the Father gave those 10 commandments in chapter 20. But he's saying, you got to keep my commandments and obey my voice. But they couldn't do it. And so that's where the day of Pentecost comes up in Jerusalem. But before we go there, to save some time, go to Exodus chapter 32. Exodus chapter 32, this is where Moses is on top of the mountain talking to Yahweh. And the people set up a golden calf, and the father was really upset. In verse 26, Exodus 32, Then Moses stood in the gate of the camp and said, Who is on Yahweh's side? Let them come unto me. And all the sons of Levi gathered themselves together unto him. And he said unto them, Thus said Yahweh, Put every man his sword by his side, and go in and out from gate to gate throughout the camp, and slay every man his brother, and every man his companion, and every man his neighbor. And the children of Levi did according to the word of Moses, and it fell of the people that day about 3,000. That's very important. Go with me to the book of Acts, chapter 2 now. Acts chapter 2, verse 1. Again, we're talking about the original Pentecost at Mount Sinai. How the Father said, you'll be my people, I'll be your Father, just obey my voice. But they could not obey his voice. He wrote the Ten Commandments on the tablets with his own finger, but they couldn't do those commandments. But here comes the fulfillment of what he said on Mount Sinai. Acts chapter 2, verse 1. And when the day of Pentecost was fully come, they were all with one accord in one place. So much can happen with Yahweh when you have people in one accord. And suddenly there came a sound from heaven as of a rushing mighty wind, and it filled all the house where they were sitting. And it appeared unto them cloven tongues like as of fire, and it sat upon each of them. And they were all filled with the Spirit of the Father, and began to speak with other tongues as the Spirit gave them utterance. So here's that fulfillment. He now has given them the power to do his commandments. We, having the Spirit of the Father inside of us, have the power from him to do his commandments. He said in Romans 8 that the same power that raised Yeshua from the dead dwells in us. That same power that raised Yeshua from the dead will quicken our bodies. See, when temptation arises, the Father will quicken us and give us the strength to avoid that temptation. Like Joseph running away from Potiphar's wife. Provide a way of escape. See, you can't exist in this world without the Spirit of the Father inside of us. You have to surrender everything to the Father. Let him mortify the deeds of your flesh. Make you more like Yeshua, as Romans 8, verse 13 and 29, and bring the fruit of the Spirit out of our lives. Love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. That's in Galatians 5, verse 22 to 26. I say this on every podcast because it's very important. It's the foundation. You can't make it to the rapture, to heaven, without his help. There's too much happening in the world right now. There's too much. The spirit of Jezebel is rising up. You can see the things that are happening in the world. And incidentally, we talked about that the mainstream news, mainstream media, they're giving you news to divert your attention from the true news. You have to be very careful. Go on the internet, search out people you can trust to get the real news. Either way, there's trouble. There's trouble in the world. Satan is the prince of the world. Now, he's controlled by Yahweh, but still, people who haven't surrendered everything to the Father could be in a lot of trouble with Satan because he's more powerful. We're filled with the Spirit of the Father. We surrender everything to the Father. He's like a little gnat under our feet. And we said in Isaiah 54 that he is a created waste. The Father created Satan, a created waster to destroy. Satan works for the Father. But all the Father can do is say, hey, come to me, surrender everything to me, and I'll protect you from Satan. But so many people are trying to do it their own way. This humanistic attitude that, hey, we're strong, and we can handle anything. No, they can't. And those of you who are filled with his Spirit, you had to surrender everything. He brought you to the point where you needed him. We needed him. We couldn't do it alone anymore. It's like running a car on fumes, empty tank, but just some fumes in there. They can't do it by themselves. Satan is too powerful with anybody who's not connected to the Father, who haven't surrendered everything to the Father. So, but when you surrender everything to the Father, the devil, like I said, is under your feet. We're talking about the Feast of Pentecost, Shavuot, and how the Father fulfilled. So when the day of Pentecost in verse 1 was fully come, is being fulfilled now, then now they have the power, now we have the power to do his commandments. Because he strengthens us by his Spirit. He makes us more like Yeshua. And we do his commandments because he enables us to do his commandments. And so Pentecost is a wonderful experience to see the fulfillment of the Father's promise. And you might remember the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, how the high priest would go in once a year into the inner place where he had the mercy seat, and he put the blood of the sacrifice on the mercy seat. And they had a rope tied to his foot, and with pomegranate bells. And so when they heard the bells, they knew that the sacrifice was accepted by the Father. If they didn't hear the bells, they knew he was dead, and they couldn't go in, so they pulled him out with the rope. So there was a sound that let the people know that the sacrifice was accepted when the high priest brought blood and put on the mercy seat in the tabernacle. And so now on the day of Pentecost, there's another sound that the sacrifice by Yeshua was accepted by the Father. Because Yeshua had put his blood on the mercy seat of heaven. See, the tabernacle on the earth was a replica, was up in heaven. So Yeshua told Mary, don't touch me, for I have not ascended to my Father and your Father. So when he put his blood on the mercy seat of heaven, the sound that the Father had accepted was the sound of a rushing mighty wind. So that's being fulfilled. Powerful. Pentecost is a time of positioning in the right place and more power. That's what we want to talk about. And expansion, how what the apostles taught was expanded throughout the world. In verse 38, Acts chapter 2, that Peter, St. Peter that denied him 3 times, now he's repositioned back in Jerusalem, where he ran away, where all the apostles ran away. Look at the repositioning. He wants to position us, the Father wants to position us in our battle stations, where we are needed the most, where we have been trained to fulfill and equipped to fulfill. In verse 38, that Peter said unto them, repent and be baptized, every one of you in the name of Yeshua, for the remission of sins, and you shall receive the gift of the Spirit of the Father. A lot of people say, baptize in the name of the Father and the Son and the Spirit in Matthew 28:19. But Matthew is written in Hebrew, and Matthew never said that. In Hebrew, Yeshua said, baptize in my name. And Colossians 3:17 says, whatever you do in word or deed, do all in the name of Yeshua. So baptism is in the word, it's something you do, it needs to be done in the name of Yeshua. There's so much power when the name of Yeshua is applied. I baptized so many people, and that power just hit, and it transformed. So I baptized people in the name of Yeshua and into the name of Yeshua. When they go down in the water, being baptized in the name of Yeshua, the flesh is under control by the Spirit of the Father. And when they come up into the water, they come up into that name. And man, the power hits. Wow. When they come up out of the water into that name and all the blessings in that name. But baptism starts with surrendering everything to the Father. For the promises unto you and your children and to all that are far off, even as many as Yahweh shall call. And with many other words did he testify and exhort, saying, save yourselves from this untoward generation. Then they that gladly received his word were baptized, and the same day there were added unto them about 3,000 souls. That's what I read to you in Exodus chapter 32. Those 3,000 people that Levites killed. The Father replaced them on the day of Pentecost. You see? First day. He doesn't leave any stone unturned, so to speak. Remember we were in the book of Esther, and Mordecai was from the family of Kish, and Haman was an Agagite. So remember when Saul was fighting the Agagites, he spared the king. And Samuel came and killed the king. So here's Saul was from the family of Kish. So here's Mordecai from the family of Kish, instrumental in killing Haman, who was an Agagite. The Father always gets his man. He got that Agagite. Somebody from the family of Kish had to kill that Agagite. Had to be instrumental in killing the Agagite, and Mordecai was. And Mordecai took his place. So important to obey the Father. Saul didn't. Mordecai did. He became second in command. He took, like I say, he took Haman's place. And verse 46, and they continued daily with one accord in the temple, and breaking bread from house to house, did eat their meat with gladness and singleness of heart, praising the Father and having favor with all the people, and Yahweh added to the church daily such as should be saved. So this all happened in the temple. In the upper room, they had that prayer meeting. But Pentecost, Shavuot, is one of the feasts, one of the 3 feasts they had to be in the temple. It didn't happen in the upper room. They prayed in the upper room, but they had to be in the temple on the feast of Pentecost, Shavuot. As it said, verse 46, they continued in the temple. So we're talking about the feast of Pentecost. It's a great time of positioning and more power, and how the word expands to so many more people. But in Acts chapter 3, another example of this more power and being in the right place at the right time, being positioned. To some of you, the Father is asking you to give up where you are and go to another place. Just like Abraham. The Father called Abraham alone, and he was wealthy, became more wealthy when he moved and went to another place, his position. In Acts chapter 3, verse 1. Now Peter and John went up together in the temple at the hour of prayer, being the 9th hour. The 9th hour of the day is 3 p.m. I have a book on my website called Noon. At the bottom of my message page, it's free. It talks about different hours of the day when the Father moves the most. There's 1 hour of the day when his healing anointing is greater than any other hour. And so the day runs from 6 p.m. to 6 p.m. The day time is from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., 12 hours in a day. Yeshua said, aren't there 12 hours in a day? And from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. are the night seasons. And that's brought out in my book, Noon. And each month has specific blessings. Each feast day is explained in that book. Again, it's free. At the bottom of my message page at henrywalker.org. So at the 9th hour of prayer, you know they were praying because that's when Yeshua gave up his life for us on the 9th hour of the day. Remember, on Passover at 3 p.m., the 9th hour of the day, the high priest would offer up the sacrifice and say, "It is finished." That's exactly what Yeshua did. The 9th hour. He's the high priest after the order of Melchizedek, and he officiated of his own death. And he said, "It is finished." There's no more sacrifices needed, as the book of Hebrews says. No more sacrifice. As Paul said in the book of Hebrews. No more sacrifices needed. One sacrifice once and for all. Verse 2, and a certain man lame from his mother's womb was carried, whom they lay daily at the gate of the temple, which is called Beautiful, to ask alms of them that entered into the temple. Who seeing Peter and John about to go into the temple, asked an alms. A perfect opportunity of positioning by the Father. And Peter fastened his eyes upon him with John and said, "Look on us." And he gave heed unto them, expecting to receive something of them. And Peter said, "Silver and gold have I none, but such as I have give thee. In the name of Yeshua of Nazareth, rise up and walk." And he took him by the right hand and lifted him up, and immediately his feet and ankle bones received strength. He didn't know how to walk, but the Father did it right away. Some of you, he wants to do an immediate miracle. He wants to give you a documented miracle. But doctors couldn't help. A documented miracle. Immediately. Remember in Mark chapter 4, Yeshua was walking on the water. And incidentally, that's another message too about Yeshua walking on the water. Some people think that Peter walked on the water. But Job 9:8 says only the Father could walk upon the water. And here's Yeshua saying, "I am, be not afraid." The King James says, "It is I." He says, "I am, be not afraid." He's showing he's the Father walking on the water. When he got into the boat, immediately he went to the other side. So some of you are in position right now for immediate miracle. How could Peter walk on the water? He wasn't filled with the Spirit of the Father. See, everybody in the boat had more faith than Peter because they knew who Yeshua was and is. But that's why Yeshua said, "Are you a little faith?" Again, Job 9:8. There's a message on my website. What if you're wrong? Things that you were taught over the years, and in actuality, they were never in the Word. It's a good message to read. Also, I have a message on there about when was Yeshua born, when did he die, when did he rise. Born on Passover, died on Passover, exactly 32 years old. Circumcised on the last day of unleavened bread. He fulfilled every feast day, with the exception of the last three in the fall, which is Feast of Trumpets, Rosh Hashanah, Day of Atonement, and Tabernacles. And every feast day is an appointment with him where he wants to bless us. And on my website, every one of these feasts are brought out, and also in the book Noon. And all these pagan holidays are just trying to take your eyes off the feast days. But it's really up to you. These pagan holidays aren't in the Word, and Satan comes into your life when you celebrate them. But that's really up to you whether you want to believe that and search it out yourself. But I'm telling you, that's how Satan got into every one of our lives, those holidays. Get all those decorations out. Come into his presence on the feast days, just like the Sabbath. The Sabbath is real. It was never done away with. Just like we read about the Ten Commandments. It was written with the finger of the Father. It's the same finger that wrote, "Mene, mene, tekel, upharsin," on a wall for Belshazzar. It's the same finger, names of the people who wanted to stone the woman taken in adultery, wrote down their sins. It's the same finger. Yeshua is the Father manifest in the flesh. It's that simple, but the spirit of Antichrist through Constantine brought in this junk, which doesn't even make sense. If we're made in the Father's image and we're one person, body, soul, and spirit, how can the Father be three people? There's a book on my website, Is the Trinity Really a Mystery? It answers every question you may have, but you've been taught erroneously over the years. It's answered in that book. It's free. No matter how you slice it, when people say God the Father, God the Son, God the Spirit, they're actually saying three gods. They may not mean it, but they're saying it. The devil just loves that. But all that stuff came from Constantine, the spirit of Antichrist. And the spirit of Antichrist is moving in the world right now. That Antichrist is alive right now. And when he's revealed more who he is, and you'll be so surprised, this is the one who's the Antichrist. His name is known around the world. He's a famous person. And this Antichrist person will attempt to win over the evangelicals and back up the Constantine doctrine of Christianity, quote unquote, all these pagan holidays and the Sunday versus the Sabbath. And the Sabbath, like I said, is written with the finger of the Father. It cannot be done away with. Matter of fact, in Acts chapter 13, Paul preached to the Jews in the synagogue on the Sabbath, and the Gentiles said, preach to us the next Sabbath, Paul. And on the next Sabbath, in verse 42, the whole city came out to hear Paul preach. And Yeshua said, when the Antichrist rises up, praise your flies not on the winter or on the Sabbath. Sabbath is never done away with. In Isaiah 66, verse 23, Isaiah says, from one Sabbath to another Sabbath, people are going to come to Jerusalem to worship Yeshua, the King, in that 1,000-year period of time known as the millennium. And the Sabbath is a beautiful time to get into His presence. This Sabbath is the start of Pentecost, and the Sabbath is a double blessing. The Sabbath runs from 6 p.m. to 6 p.m. And the first day of the week starts on Saturday at 6 p.m. Get on His timetable. Nowhere in the Word does it say that the day begins at 12:01 a.m. It's 6 p.m. and 6 p.m. And the beginning of the year is Nisan 1, which was April 1st this past year. It's not January 1. So that's all answered on my website, on thehenrywalker.org, different messages. Let's go back to Acts chapter 3. Verse 10, and he knew that it was he which sat for alms at the beautiful gate of the temple, and they were all filled with wonder and amazement at that which had happened unto them. And as the lame man which was healed held Peter and John, all the people ran together unto them, in the portion that is called Solomon's, greatly wondering. So they were all filled with wonder and amazement, but then Peter started preaching, and they realized that the Father had done that in the name of Yeshua. It's important. Look at the power and the positioning. Peter and John at the right place at the right time. And the Father gets all praise and the honor as a result. In chapter 4, in verse 1, as they spoke unto the people, the priests and the captain of the temple and the Sadducees came unto them, being grieved that they taught the people and preached through Yeshua the resurrection from the dead. And they laid hands on them and put them in hold until the next day, for it was now eventime. Howbeit many of them which heard the word believed, and the number of the men was about 5,000. And the authorities asked them in verse 7, and when they had set them in the midst, they asked, by what power or by what name have you done this? Then Peter, filled with the Spirit of the Father, said unto them, you rulers of the people and elders of Israel, if we this day be examined of the good deed done to the impotent man, by what means he is made whole, be it known unto you all and to the people of Israel, that by the name of Yeshua of Nazareth, whom you crucified, whom the Father raised from the dead, even by him does this man stand here before you whole. This is the stone which was set in order of you builders, which has become the head of the corner. Neither is there salvation in any other, for there is none other name under heaven given among men, whereby we must be saved. They gave all the praise and honor to the Father. Verse 13, now when they saw the boldness of Peter and John, and perceived that they were unlearned and ignorant men, they marveled, and they took knowledge of them, that they had been with Yeshua. When people talk to you, do they know that you represent Yeshua, that Yeshua, the Father's inside of you? They can know by the fruit of the Spirit coming out. Again, love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. All that fruit describes Yeshua. Love, joy, peace. It's all about Him. People see that coming out of us. They know that we're becoming more like Yeshua to the power of the Spirit of the Father. In verse 18, they called them and commanded them not to speak at all, nor teach in the name of Yeshua. And Peter and John answered and said unto them, whether it be right in the sight of the Father to hearken unto you more than unto the Father, judge ye. For we cannot but speak the things which ye have seen and heard. So they went into the presence of the Father. In verse 29, and now Yahweh, behold their threatenings, and grant unto thy servants that with all boldness they may speak your word. So they wanted more power. That's what Pentecost is about. More power. Positioning in the right place at the right time, and more power. We can only get the power from the Father. And as we decrease, He increases. That's why He's inside of us, making us more like Yeshua, and getting our flesh out of the way, controlling our flesh, so He can bring more power out of our lives and position us in the right place at the right time. Verse 30, by stretching forth thy hand to heal, as signs and wonders may be done by the name of Yeshua. The Holy Child is a bad translation. See, the devil wants you to think of Yeshua as that little baby in the manger with all those, with animals around. It's a lie anyway. You read my message, when was Yeshua born? When did he die? When did he rise? Yeshua was born in a cave down below, where he kept the lambs on Passover. And when he brought the lambs out is when he was born on Passover, on the cave down below, by the tower of the flock. It's in my message. When was Yeshua born? When did he die? When did he rise? In verse 31, and when they had prayed, the place was shaken where they were assembled together, and they were all filled with the Spirit of the Father, and they spoke the word of the Father with boldness. They got more boldness. They wanted more boldness. He did what they asked him to do, giving them more boldness, more power. In Acts chapter 5. Verse 12, and by the hands of the apostles were many signs and wonders wrought among the people, and they all were one accord in Solomon's porch. See, just what they asked for, the Father gave them more power. He wants to give you more power, more boldness, position you in the right place. He's coming back soon. The rapture is soon coming, and he wants us to be in the right place at the right time so he can bring more people in the rapture. The most important thing you can do is turn that flesh over to the Spirit of the Father. Let him mortify the deeds of your flesh. Make you more like Yeshua. Bring the fruit of the Spirit out of your life. Again, love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Let him position you in the right place. We can help somebody go into the rapture. Even if it's only one person, he wants to put you there in the right place and give you power where he can talk through you to help that person. There's no telling if he brings you in front of somebody, what he can say to you to give to that person. Because he's interested in that person going with him in the rapture. It's a really important time, and Pentecost is leading up to the rapture. And he's preparing us for the rapture, preparing us to have more people go. I remember having this dream where me and other people in the remnant were one place. We heard the first trumpet and we ran. We had to gather in another place. And as we were running, I saw this lady stick her head out the door. I said, why don't you come with us? And she came running with us. So the first trump is when we move to a certain place, we gather. And the last trump, we go. This is so important. There's so many people out there. There's so much confusion in the world. There's so many things that are frustrating people. I see what people seem to be prospering, but they have to deal with the Father. Meantime, don't be frustrated by what's happening. Just allow the Father to position you in the right place with more power so we can help people. It's important. Defy the headlines. Don't deny the headlines. Defy the headlines. See, he keeps us in a secret place. No weapon formed against us shall prosper, and greater is he that's in us than he that is in the world. He keeps us secretly in a pavilion from the strife of tongues. So don't worry what's happening in the world. The Father has control over everything. Everything is created by him and for him, and by him all things consist. Whether it be thrones, principalities, mights, dominions. Everything was created by him and for him, and by him all things consist. So don't worry. Don't be anxious. Just allow him to change you into the image of Yeshua. He's doing that with all of us. Allow him to position you in the right place, give you more power, and as you do, his word will expand. People say, wow, look how the Father moved to that person. He wants you to be in the right place at the right time. In verse 12, chapter 5, Acts 5, and by the hands of the apostles were many signs and wonders wrought among the people. They were all at one accord in Solomon's porch, in the temple. And the rest of us, no man joined himself to them, but the people magnified them. You're not going to please everybody all the time. Some people don't want to hear what you have to say. They rather believe something that some tradition that's not in the Word in their relationship with Yeshua and hold on to it through pride. Whatever they believe and hold on to it as far as traditions that are not in the Word in their relationship with the Father. If it's not in the Word, they better get rid of it. If they don't want to get rid of it, it's really up to them. You can't do much. All you are doing is delivering a message, but it's up to them to receive it or not. It's like a mailman or mail woman. They delivered a message, but they didn't send it. In verse 14, and believers were the more added to Yahweh, multitudes both of men and women. insomuch that they brought forth the sick into the streets, and laid them on beds and couches, that at least the shadow of Peter passing by might overshadow some of them. There came also a multitude out of the cities round about Jerusalem, bring sick folks, and them which were vexed with unclean spirits, and he healed every one of them. Wow. So the word of the Father is getting around. His power is getting around. So again, this Feast of Pentecost starts a season of more power, positioning, and his word growing and growing. Remember, Herod didn't give the Father praise and honor, and the worms ate him, but it says the word grew and multiplied. So in verse 18, they laid their hands on the apostles and put them in the common prison. But by night, the Father opened the prison and they came out. Verse 28, they were brought before the authorities again, saying, did not we straitly command you they should not teach in this name? And behold, you have filled Jerusalem with your doctrine and intend to bring this man's blood upon us. They filled the whole Jerusalem with this doctrine. And Peter and the other apostles answered, said, we ought to obey the Father rather than man. So what we're talking about today, the Feast of Pentecost, is pointing the way to the rapture. And he's positioning us in our battle positions and giving us more power. As we surrender to him, as I mentioned before, as we decrease in the flesh, allow him to decrease our flesh, he increases his power in us and out of us. So, just a reminder, this is a pro-life ministry. We believe that life begins at conception. John said in 1 John chapter 2, verse 13, little children, you have known the Father. How? We were introduced to the Father at the moment of conception. The Father is the agent of conception. The odds are 75 million to 1 of us being conceived. But the Father had his hand in that. And so life begins at conception. And abortion is murder. Not legally, but in the eyes of the Father, it's murder. And if you had an abortion out there, repent. Ask the Father to give you and go on. And every service, in every assembly, should be exposing the spirit of abortion as murder. And if they don't, that spirit of death is hanging around it. It could follow people home. If you're in an assembly and they're not exposing the spirit, every service, get out of there. It needs to be exposed. Just like some thief was ready to rob a house and the lights were off. Then all of a sudden the lights come on. He or she's going to run. So it's important that you realize that life begins at conception. We hear so much about a woman's right to choose. What about the 500,000 baby girls that were aborted last year in the United States alone? Where are their rights to become a teenager, to become a woman? Where are their women rights? And also, don't vote for any politician that is part of their platform, abortion on demand, because they're guilty of murder, not legally, but in the eyes of the Father. And so are you, by helping them get into office. And some actually believe in partial birth abortion too, where baby is partly out of the womb, can be killed. This is terrible. This is barbaric. This is like worshiping the spirit of Moloch, when he used to carry a baby under the arch of Baal and throw it into a fire right by an image of this pagan god Moloch. It's the same spirit. It's the same spirit, Herod's spirit, the one that killed every child 2 years old and under in Yeshua's time. And the Pharaoh, it's the spirit of Pharaoh that wanted to kill all the male babies in the time of Moses. It's the same spirit. You need to take a stand. You need to pray. You need to pray for the innocent babies in the womb. We need to pray against Roe versus Wade. We need to pray for women to realize that they carry a life in their wombs. And a mother and father don't become a mother and father when a baby comes out of the womb. Only is when the baby is conceived. I have some facts I just want to read to you. I have more facts on my podcast, podpoint.com/Henry Walker. podpoint.com/Henry Walker. At 18 days, the baby's heart begins to beat. At 8 weeks, every organ is present. The heartbeat is steady. The liver makes blood cells. The kidneys begin to function. 8.5 weeks, the fingerprints are being engraved by guess who? The Father. At 4 months, the baby's heart is pumping 25 quarts of blood per day. At 4.5 months, the baby feels pain. There's so much money being made on abortion, selling baby parts. You see, every baby in the womb deserves life outside the womb. So we want to pray in that area. But we're going to pray right now. If you want prayer, just put your hand on the computer or on your cell phone. And if you don't know that you're saved, just say after me. Say, Father, I believe that Yeshua died for me. I turn my flesh over to you so you can mortify the deeds of my flesh. Make me more like Yeshua. Bring the fruit of the Spirit out of my life. Love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Father, come into my spirit. Fill me with your Spirit. Thank you, Father, for bringing me into your family. If you said that prayer, you're right for a miracle. Let's go to the Father in prayer for miracles right now. First, we want to pray for the babies in the womb, innocent babies. Father, bring them to a full birth. Let the parents care for them and bring them up knowing you. Father, we thank you and praise you, Father. We curse that Roe versus Wade. We curse those other legislations, Father, that want to kill a baby 28 days after the baby's born and 7 days in those 2 states. We curse those legislations. In the name of Yeshua, by the blood of Yeshua. And if you need an individual miracle, just believe with me. Father, there's sickness out there, diseases that are out there, the growths and tumors. Anything that's not of Yeshua, I command you, get away from the people right now. Go and don't return. Right now, in the name of Yeshua, by the blood of Yeshua, Father, by your stripes we healed. Father, I ask you to touch them right now. Healing is the children's bread. Oh, minister to them, Father. There's other needs that they have too, Father. I speak that their lives, physically, spiritually, mentally, financially, every aspect of their lives will always line up your word, Father. In your name, Father, my name is Yeshua, by your blood, the blood of Yeshua. And Father, keep expanding this ministry. Let other people know about this ministry, the podcast, and the ministry in general. And we thank you and praise you, Father. In the mighty name of Yeshua, by the blood of Yeshua. So please tell other people about this podcast, about this ministry. And remember, till next time, this is Evangelist Henry Walker saying, greater is the Father in you, your daddy, than he that is in the world.